So this month's podcast will be part one and part two. We have had so much great stories from Mark and Lauren and Andrew and Mike that it just went into almost 2 hours of a podcast. So, and we didn't want to edit it and take out some of the great stories. So it's part one and part two. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so this is the second half. This month it's a game of two halves. So we now have Michael Armstrong and Andrew Templeton. I shouldn't call you Drew. Andrew Templeton to tell us and share with us a little bit of the history of Borderway. So introduce yourself, guys, and tell us a little bit about your start at H&H and where you are now.
Right. I'm Michael Armstrong.
Welcome, Michael.
I'm classed now as the senior admin manager and senior IT manager within the farm stock business. And I know the recent adverts in the press and media looked like I've been here for at least 50 years, but that's a lie.
How many years have you been here? What year did you start?
1983, Christmas 1983.
Christmas 1983.
So how long?
So that's just over 40 years now.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant when I started, because after working 1 week, I worked 2 days in that week, and I got a full week's pay because of the Christmas holidays, and I thought it was brilliant.
Oh,
you started in December?
I started that. First
Christmas
pay
week.
packet was Christmas, just after Christmas.
Oh wow!
So how old were you when you started?
17.
17. Straight from school,
Straight from school. I tried a few A levels and various things, but so that wasn't for me. I didn't want to go to university. I wanted something else. I really came to H&H to be an auctioneer.
Right.
That seemed to be the thing to do.
Yeah.
But I had to do a correspondence course, and that didn't suit me either. So I chucked all those books to one side.
So how did you? Mark and Lauren told us about how they got their jobs, like with the interview. Did you have an interview with
Bobby Lennox, myself.
Yes.
I think Mark and Lauren would be Bert Irving at the time.
Yes,
that's what he said, yeah.
He'd retired. Bobby Lennox was my boss. My interview consisted of being invited into the boardroom one day when I was here at the auction with my dad, and he says, "This is the hours you can work. Are you interested?" And I says, "Yes." Right, you start next Monday, sort of thing. So that was brilliant. Yeah, I like that interview.
Yeah, it was good.
Nowadays, I interview people for jobs, and I make it a little bit more awkward than that. So I try to get the best person for the job, but I might have been the only person for the job at the time.
That's worked out quite well, though.
Nice.
And Drew?
Well, I'm 43 years down. 43 years this week. I got my interview, the late Dick Harrison.
Right.
I started in August. I was still 16. I was going to go back to school, but that didn't happen. But father phoned Dick Harrison and said, "Is there any chance of a job?" And Dick says, "Yes, come down this afternoon and we'll give you an interview." So I come down and interviewed, and he said, "Go and have a walk around the market." And he phoned one or two men that I knew of. And come back in, and he says, "Aye, the job's yours if you want it. You start next Monday."
Just like that?
Just like that. And then, so I was 16 at the time, I couldn't drive, so onto the train I went. First time I come down, my mum and dad brought me down, and with the rising damp sensation, I'd organised to book into a set of digs up Warwick Road, which was an education of my mother.
Well, like a bed and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast place, and it was a case of walked in, and this lassie with a short skirt came to the door, which didn't impress my mother.
Your mum wouldn't have been very...
And went up, and my room was to be in the attic more or less, and as we got to the top there was a bit of plastic hanging over some wooden rails that was full of water.
Oh, lovely.
So mother said, "Not tonight, son." So we sat in the station hotel for half an hour and tried phoning one or two people, and then the rest's history after that.
But you got a spot to
Places
stay?
to-
Mm-hmm.
So was that through an agricultural connection that your father knew?
Through
that
a
through the
lawyer,
market?
a late Derek Bliss, that was a lawyer that was on the
Oh, right,
Hereford
okay.
Council with father,
Right.
and that was a
And
contact.
that's how we knew him. Very good.
And then you commuted by train until you were... When did you get your licence? 17?
About a fortnight after my 17th birthday.
Aye.
And then did you live in Cumbria?
I lived in Scotby
Scotby?
for
Oh, it's
about
a nice
8
one.
years, And then Jimmy Hislop moved me to Lockerbie, which I did about maybe 8 or 10 years at Lockerbie, and then I come back to Carlisle to focus on selling dairy cattle.
Yeah. And when you were you full time at Lockerbie then for a while?
No,
Or
I was
are you
work
moved-
Monday,
Yeah.
Monday in Carlisle, Tuesdays at Lockerbie, Wednesdays at Dumfries, Thursdays at Lockerbie, and then quite often a Friday in Carlisle.
We've heard it. The Fridays seem to be quite interesting.
Yeah, they
What,
do.
There's
Mark?
always been very busy weeks in the days gone by when there wasn't restrictions on movements. We could
Yeah.
have sales all the time,
All the
wherever
time,
we
yeah,
wanted.
constantly.
But quite like Mark was telling me about the Fridays back in the day. An
Yeah,
hour and a
with
half
you.
for lunch.
An hour and a quarter, actually.
An hour and a
Oh.
quarter.
15 minutes travel
Yeah,
time.
I made a note of that. Yeah, we loved. Nowadays, we don't get any lunch hours at all. We
No.
just have to sit at our desk. That's how it's changed, and you can nibble away. But years ago, hour and a quarter. It was an extra quarter an hour given to us, so we had time to drive uptown, park your car, and come back again within that quarter an hour driving time. So you had a full hour uptown, and it was a whole office outing with some of the auctioneers. When there's no sale on, everybody piled into cars uptown, 3 or 4 pints back to the office.
Who was the guy that had the 8 pints on the Friday afternoon?
Willie Lynn.
Willie, yes, we always try to emulate Willie, but we couldn't keep up with Willie.
8 pints in an hour is quite a lot.
Oh, my.
Yeah. It was always hard going when you invited him on a lad's night out because he was really going for it. We struggled. Andrew wasn't a bad drinker himself.
But no to quit with Willie.
Ah, good. So, but how has it changed, Anders, from when you started? Like you told me last week about your first pay packet. You still have it. It was cash in an envelope.
Cash in an envelope on a Friday afternoon.
Did you get paid weekly?
Weekly,
Very
aye.
weekly. Yeah.
Mm.
Years ago, when I first started, we had to join a union, and just because we were so badly looked after at H&H at the
Oh, wow.
time, and one of the things they were trying to get was a pay structure that was similar to the councils, where the refuse collectors we would be on this equivalent wage for working in our industry, but after a few years it petered out, so we didn't have to be in the union, so we're well looked after now. So, yeah.
So did you go straight in as an auctioneer?
As a trainee auctioneer,
Yeah.
first day in here, I was pushing calves up. I didn't think I was going to make the grade. I was pushing calves up into the calf ring, got covered in calf skitter, because in those days the calves were fairly weak.
Right,
It's wee calves, yeah.
And then went back to my digs and I got liver for my tea. The two things I hate is calves and liver. So I thought that Monday night when I phoned home, I thought, this is not going to work. But the restrictions, prior, in those days there was no restrictions on movements, no restrictions on even ear tags. You only had to give
Yeah, they were
herd
saying that.
numbers when you were selling cattle.
Yeah.
So you know there was no passports, there was no booking in. Cattle stood here for 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. You had a completely.
We eventually had to, I don't know what time scale it was, we had to produce ear numbers into the computer system at the time. So basically people just made a string of numbers up actually. So you wrote on a card, put it into the computer. It didn't relate to anything, but it looked quite good on paper that we were trying to
do something.
But there was no computers when you started. was there?
Right back.
There was, we used a system that were clacked onto sheets in the rings.
Yeah.
And there was a Lamson system, which is an air-driven system, that brought the sheets to the main
Oh,
office.
your
yeah,
little
yeah.
tubes, yeah.
Yeah, Mark told us about that.
Yeah.
And then were they still on paper to start with, though, in the office? Like, Lon and Mark told us about the purchase.
Yeah,
sheets.
purchase sheets. Yeah, when I started, it's 83, 84. I can still remember there was a lady called Audrey Bouch, and she was in charge of the computer at the time.
The computer.
The
In
one
charge.
computer.
It was in a room that was quite large. No one can see this particular room, but it was a large room where this one huge machine sat. And every night she had to go to that computer and take out the storage disk. It wasn't equivalent to a backup disk or something now, but and it was equivalent, if you can picture a Massey Fergie, Grey Fergie wheel. It's about that size with half the thickness, and that was the storage disk you had to pick up out of the computer and take it over to the safe and store it overnight in our safe, and in
Bring
the
it out in the
following
morning.
morning bring it out again, put it back in the computer.
Now that little chip is probably.
There's a cloud now, isn't it?
It's a cloud
Well,
now,
exactly.
yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Cloud?
Yep, nothing
We're all about
physical at
clouds
all.
now, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you start out when you first sold then, Drew?
First sold farm sale, farm sale and a bit of furniture.
What was can you remember the first item?
It's that long ago now.
Was it a bit? So it was a bit of.
Small tools at a farm sale.
Yeah.
It was the first thing I saw.
Can you remember what the farm sale where it was?
It was at Abbeytown.
All right.
And can you remember the feeling that you felt? Was it like?
I was nervous.
You were
I was
very
nervous.
So who was with you that day? Who
There
was the senior?
a chap called Donald Inch.
Yeah.
And Raymond Clements.
I've heard We've heard quite a bit about Raymond.
Raymond was a character. But
Yeah.
a spade was a spade with Raymond.
Yeah.
And did you have a clerk? Do you remember who your clerk was? Did you ever have to? Did Mark
It
or
would be
Lon
Kenny
ever?
Dixon.
Could be to Kenny at the time, yeah.
Kenny Dixon, I think.
Did Mark or Lon ever clerk you?
They have done
Yeah.
various times.
And then you moved on to
Calves. And then for calves to dairy.
in Lockerbie. What did you sell in Lockerbie?
Lockerbie I sold fat ewes. And that was about it in Lockerbie and some store sheep.
There was never any dairy sales in Lockerbie, was there?
There was two a year with 2 dairy sales. And at that time there was more fat cattle at Lockerbie than there was in Carlisle.
Oh my god.
Wow.
People from Carlisle took the fat cattle up to Lockerbie. Like the calving and graze when they farmed at Southway would take the fat cattle to Lockerbie to sell because they were butchers' heifers for the Glasgow trade.
Oh, okay.
Because it used to be like a 2-day sale up at Lockerbie, didn't it?
They would fat sheep in the one day and then fat cattle the next day.
Nice.
And then Carlisle started taking over, and before we knew it, we had 2,000 fat cattle and away.
What did you start out as? Michael?
Just the office junior, and that was it on the front desk. I worked alongside Lorne's sister, actually, Donna, and Wendy Dean was the telephonist, was a proper telephonist in those
What's
days.
a telephonist?
Specialised in answering telephones and on a switchboard. A proper
A
switchboard.
telephonist?
She,
Well, there would have been.
She was.
Oh, like a switchboard. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
she was
Imagine
switch-
being a
and
telephonist.
she was a switchboard operator.
Was Donna full time at the?
Donna would be full time at the
She
time,
was,
yeah.
Wow.
Before she married Michael and went off to have family and things.
Nice. And then you progressed. Did you do clerk?
I stayed there for a long time. I think it was on the front counter, serving customers for 2 years. At the time, there's no computers actually printed anything out.
Yeah,
so
so everything was-
on a Monday, when you had those 2,000 cattle or whatever we had to,
It's handwritten.
the farmers would come in for their prices and who purchased them, and you'd have to go and physically write all those, a list out from the sheet that came from the ring to hand to the farmer, and that was your job, just back and forth to the counter all day.
All days. For 2 years you did that.
Near
constant.
enough, yeah, on a
And
Monday.
then you went to...
I went round all the auctions just like Andrew did. At the time it was on. I never got the chance to go to Dumfries. Dumfries sort of closed sometime in the 80s, so I never got to go there. But
Was that when it was bought over, I guess, to where it is today?
Where was it?
It was in the White Sands.
Oh,
the,
so it's
the two
completely
markets stood together on the White Sands at Dumfries. You had Thompson, Roddick and Laurie had the cattle, and H&H had the sheep. And then Thompson's moved off the White Sands to where they're situated now in Dumfries. But we stayed for about another 5 or 6 years after that in the White Sands.
So there's no actual visual.
It's still there. It was
is
bought
it?
by the council as a car park. It's
So
still
whereabouts on the White Sands today then?
right
just-
opposite the river anyways.
used. About 2/3 of the way up the White Sands, where the car park kind of splits and there's a road goes off and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a pub.
Oh yeah. I know where you are.
Is the Black Bull still a pub? It was the market pub at the
Right.
time.
So it would have flooded then. That's
Aye.
that bit floods.
Often
quite-
flooded, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it still floods now.
Yeah, helped wash out.
But I never managed to get there myself, so I never. And the
So
same,
that-
same with Holt Whistle, I never got to.
So
Holt
that
Whistle
closed
either.
and then a new market was obviously built, what it is today, by the new
Well, Thompson's built their new market up at the site
And
where
that's
they're
the one
at
that is
today,
today.
aye. And Holt Whistle was still open at the time when I started. There's a picture of me with Dick Harrison at Holt Whistle. For about 2 years I got to Holt Whistle. And then
Oh, was that a seasonal?
seasonal market.
Like for
Blue-
sucker
blue-grey-
calves?
It was the biggest blue-grey sale in England
Wow.
at the time. And then we also had Newcastleton, which was a seasonal market, which used to sell a lot of breeding sheep and a lot of store sheep, plus the 3 suckle calf sales.
And were they all bluegrays on Newcastle?
Blue-greys,
Yeah, it was very traditional at the time. Yeah, we moved on in the 70s with the Continentals coming in, and that's where we kicked in big style at Carlisle.
I guess now is a good time to get a quick note from our sponsors, Glenn.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Finance for Farms, we're specialists within the agricultural sector.
The whole leasing of cattle's strange. A lot of people haven't heard of it before and they wonder how it works, but it's really straightforward.
Find a batch of cows I want to buy or do a deal on, I can phone them up and say, what's the chances of doing a deal on these batch of animals? And they'll say yes or no.
Anything that I've asked, or requested and spoken to Shire about has been dealt in a, quickly in a professional manner, and it's either a yes or a no.
What makes Finance for Farms different to mainstream funders and banks is speed and efficiency. A farmer can call us today, say he's looking to go to market tomorrow, and the finance will be in place for him to go the following day and purchase the animals he requires.
To learn more about the finance solutions available to support your farm's growth, call the Finance for Farms team on 01827 300 333 or head over to their website on www.financeforfarms.co.uk.
We can't forget our other wonderful long-term sponsor, Herds Media.
Yeah, fantastic guys. They do all our videography and photography. So
Videography, photography, podcast recording. They do a lot of on-farm, agricultural based, whether that's selling a farm, breed societies. I think they are teed up to do Dairy Day, I think.
They're doing Dairy Day. They do all our live streaming for expos. And I forget what Alistair said the last time. The millions of pounds worth that they have filmed, for the real
the £1 million worth of farms, that they've sold.
Millions and millions. So that's and that's not just only for H&H. They do that for most of the real estate companies in Cumbria. So that's really good.
So if you want to find out more, please log on to herdsmedia.com or their social pages at Herds Media. Funny stories. Give us your best ones. Give us your best anecdote.
You've quite a few notes.
Come on, Michael.
You're
you want to share.
What I would like, tell us something you've never told anybody else, or you don't tell anybody else.
Go on.
Well, I suppose, did the other two, Mark and Lon, mention about Willie Lynn's, or...
Well, they told us about Willie
Just
Lynn's,
about the 8 pints, that's
8
all they
pints
told us
Friday.
about Willie
That's fine, we'll leave it at that then. But one of
Tell him
the...
about his unlucky escape.
Go on then,
The
tell us.
unlucky escape, because he wouldn't have... He's passed away now, poor Willie, but he was one of our head cashiers. And we can still remember to this day what happened one Friday afternoon. This is when, in the days when... the computers were there, and the head cashier had to sign all the checks one by one for maybe 1,000 checks a week.
Wow.
Tom Pearce would be sitting there signing the checks, and Willie sort of just decided in one night at the end of the day, Willie, can you just sign us this? It's just to do a transfer. And so he just carried on signing, signed Willie's piece of paper, then Willie went off with it, and he went off and stood beside the fax machine, and nobody thought anything of it. And then Monday morning came, and where's Willie? Willie hasn't turned in today. Well, we'll wait a while and we'll phone his house, see if anything's... Oh, his landlady. And so we phoned, and they couldn't get an answer, so the police eventually went and broke in. Willie wasn't there, but there was pieces of paper that looked a bit suspicious, had various bank details on, Spanish bank details, etc., etc. So Willie was at the time on the Friday night actually faxing a bank transfer of 100,000 out of our account at H&H to a Spanish bank at the time.
And he was going to ride off into the sunset?
He was going to ride off into the sunset. But unknown to Willie, because English bank holidays are different to Spanish bank holidays.
Oh, no.
So when he arrived on the Monday to pick up the money at the bank, there's a Spanish bank holiday, so there's nobody there.
Mañana.
So that allowed you to
We got our money back. It was a police investigation. I don't know if it went to a court case at all, but we dropped the charges. But unfortunately, Willie lost his job at the time. But there was no hard feelings.
Like 100 grand at the time. When was that, in the 80s?
When was that?
The kind of late 80s.
Late 80s, probably, yeah.
Wow.
So, like a lot of money, yeah.
But you never checked the bank holidays in Spain?
No. So it's just a little downfall there.
Yeah.
So close yet so far.
So it makes you smile all the time. Nowadays there's so many things in process, checks here, that we can never do that. any colleague could get away with that anymore.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
We used to do a lot of sales away. Well, we specialised in different sales, didn't we? Well, were you ever involved in the Doug Mash sale down at Buckinghamshire? He's a Limousin breeder. He has his own auction ring on site, and in the early days, again, it'll be late 80s again, 90s. No, in the mid-90s, because it was David Dickinson, the late David Dickinson, I went to a sale with, and we were invited down to the sale. David Tomlinson and Heather Pritchard had gone down prior to that, so we had to go on the train. And we set off from Carlisle, and we picked up two lads, Mike Harrison and Roy Fishwick, at shop on the way down because they were going to go to the sale. So I had my office case and bag and all the rest of it. And by the time we got down, we were meant to get off Milton Keynes, but we drank so much lager on the way down. It was unbelievable. It just Roy Fishwick's and Mike Harrison's fault, to be quite honest.
Of course it was.
So we shot past Milton Keynes, we didn't know it was there. We ended up in Euston. So how do we get back to this farm sale? So we had to get to another platform, with all our kit and case and all the rest of it, and got a train back up towards Milton Keynes in a taxi for there on in. But we were so late. It was going to be a great event because Doug Mash was part of. He's maybe a director at Saracens rugby, so box all ready for us that night to watch the Saracens rugby game. So David Dickens and myself missed it because we were so drunk and late. So we had to stay at the hotel. So we managed to stagger to the sale the next day. And in the morning, I thought there was something not right with me baggage to get to there. But we chucked everything in the taxi and got to the farm sale. Shit, I haven't got me works bag with all me kit in for the sale. You left it in the train? And well, Roy comes wandering in and he says, Mike, was this yours? I found it on the platform at Euston. And it was the sale case with me £2,000 in for the sale.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, thank you, Roy.
Thank God! Oh my goodness, you'd never be as lucky.
Oh, I'll never be as lucky again. No.
This is our head guy now.
I know, this is our
You learn from your mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes, yeah.
But no, in those days you actually could get a lot of drink if you wanted a lot of drink.
Yeah.
It used to be in Lockerbie, we'd have a 2-hour lunch hour when there was no sale. And you'd end up in the Black Bull with John Carruthers and Alan Patterson and these sort of lads. And it wasn't just a pint you had a pint and a chaser.
Every time.
And I remember one time coming back from Lockerbie and I was in a mess. And it was a friend of mine picked us up, was coming out of the market, taking a load of cattle to Straven, and he says, "Here, jump in here and you'll be sober by the time we get up and back." So I went to Straven and back with this load of cattle, and it was awful.
I quite often was the designated driver because I was the young ones. I had to stay sober with Lockerbie.
Oh, so you had to drive?
Yeah, so I had the record time getting them back from Lockerbie once in the old Ford Escort. It was 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
20 minutes from Lockerbie.
Flying
down
that road. Flying down. I know. I guess though back then you would work long days. So on a Friday when you're or on a Thursday, whatever, and there wasn't a sale, a 2-hour lunch break was probably quite. You'd work hours and hours and hours.
The sales were like 10, 11 o'clock at night. Mondays, were they?
No, they got to that stage, but as I say, when I started here, they had 70 fat cattle, and you would be finished. They sold the fat sheep, and then 1 o'clock we sold the fat cattle, and the sale was finished by 3, and I tidied up by 5.
As the years went on and the more cattle came forward, we had to bring the sale time forward all the time. I think it got to 11 o'clock, so we could finish within the day. Because a lot of the time we were selling cattle to 11 o'clock at night.
I was Mark sort of touched on that a little bit.
And then you have to do all the premium work, the subsidies have to sort out.
Lon was telling us about grading of cattle and sheep for the subsidies.
The paperwork was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and then you were back in to do the motor auction on the Tuesday.
Yeah, so. Mark told us about the motor auction then as well.
What's been the most significant sort of event for you guys? I think we touched a little bit about BSC and foot and mouth with Lauren and Mark, and I think that
those were the big game changers. Changed everything. Yeah. BSC especially. We even had to work Sundays those times to get rid of all the cows that weren't eligible for the food chain. Had to collect them on a Sunday and get like 300 cows on a Sunday morning would turn up. To go to slaughter, direct to slaughter, to get them incinerated basically.
And during foot and mouth, did you go to the
I went
DEFRA?
over to DEFRA,
Yeah, you
I
did.
was in the
What did you do?
statistics department.
Oh, right, okay.
That was again, something, we didn't get involved with computers too much over here at the time, so that was my learning curve for using Excel sheets. I learned so much over there at the time. So
That's quite interesting. So they were collecting all sort of data from
all the
farms.
cases, that you've been evaluated that day, and then the 3 kilometre calls around that, and then you had to go and present things to Brigadier Birtwistle at the time, and that in the ops room each day to say that these are the stats for the day, and then he would work out where he was going to start culling next, basically.
Wow. Military operation.
And your foot and mouth, Drew, you obviously were involved with.
I valued all through foot and mouth as a dirty valuer. I think
a dirty valuer.
A
dirty valuer.
Oh, wow.
Tell us more, Drew.
Your dirty valuers and that were never allowed to go into farms to do anything else. Where you had some clean valuers that did contingency values, which were classed as clean farms because they didn't have foot and mouth.
So you went on to infected farms?
I was in infected farms
Right.
for the 6 months, valuing from Stranraer right to about Settle. And you were killing your industry, basically you're killing all your cattle in
You
your
probably weren't
industry.
allowed to go home either way at the time.
After the farm went down next door to me, about 7 or 8 weeks in,
You were
I was
allowed
able to go home.
Oh, so you'd have spent a couple of months in a hotel? Oh my goodness.
Wow. It was a really hard time for everyone though, wasn't it, within the industry?
Oh,
Massive.
it was terrible. And you knew fine that it was a waste of money to a certain extent. There was a lot of money wasted that should never have been wasted.
Yeah, yeah.
And values got carried. You were going on to farms and greed was coming into play. And it was, how much can you give me? And as I said to one man, I can give you as much as I like, and what if I want it?
Yeah.
But so those sort of two events really have changed. BSE possibly, well, definitely BSE more than any other event, changed what, not just for H&H, but the whole auction, the live auction. Because before that, there wouldn't have been any, private trading or direct trading of any sort of categories of livestock.
Farm to farm, yeah.
And that did kick in
Private
private trading
style,
after
private
that.
trading,
So we were selling whole dairy herds from the south back up north, etc.
I think prior to foot and mouth, H&H would only sell one herd of dairy cows privately. And you never bothered, nobody ever bothered about selling things privately because the ring was king. And your fat stock all came to the ring, your breeding stock all came to the ring. Your store stock, it wasn't a case of trying to sell them privately because nobody bothered wanting to sell them privately. They wanted the ring. They just wanted to support the rings.
I know I was reading through some of those articles last night from '84 in our little, what do you call them, yearly bounded catalogues.
Yeah,
and
scrapbooks of all the adverts
books,
and the sale reports, yeah.
And the late Dick Harrison said exactly the same as you, Andrew. The ring was the main thing all the time. And it's so transparent, and farmers all supported the ring.
The ring still is.
Yeah. And he said that farmers aren't slow; they're very switched on. They know when they look at the livestock auctioneers' reports, etc. They know when the trade's going down. They'll withhold stock from the live ring to make it go back up again.
Yeah.
Smart people.
Definitely.
Any memorable customers that you want to talk about?
Oh, you had your big customers. You had men like Willie McCrone.
I will say Willie
He was
McCrone.
mentioned,
He's been mentioned.
He gave me a right dogging once. Not that way, but.
Did you not know his Did you not know his name?
Yeah, exactly. The big man didn't know the big man's name, and I was so slow at writing his list. He used to come with 20 and 30 cattle every week, and he had to write all those prices out. And well, I like getting it right, and he's got his stick on the counter, so he's banging his stick. Like, come on, laddie! Come on, laddie!
My bar was run out. I need a new pen.
That stuck with me forever. That one.
Anyone stuck with you?
Oh yeah, men like Ian Armitage and that.
They never mentioned Ian, but he was a big buyer, wasn't he?
He was a big cattle buyer, and he was.
Those are the two people, Andrew, that are
standouts.
Is Ian? Are those men still alive?
No, Ian passed away recently, maybe 2 years ago.
2 years ago. His son's still alive. I saw him the other week at the Yorkshire.
And does his son keep the business going? No.
Ian Armitage he bought so many cattle on a Monday that you panicked in the office when you came in. He looked like someone from the mafia, really. He was a huge fellow with a big black coat on, and he'd come in, and he'd write his pen was in his hand to write his check out, and everything at the time was manual. You had to add it all up. He'd buy 200-300 cattle, and then you had the one chance to write that check out. If you got it wrong, that was it. You'd
in
lose
trouble.
He wouldn't give you another check. He wouldn't amend anything
Until the next week.
He wouldn't do that either. No, you just lost it. It was crucial. And when we moved on to computers, the computers at the time, he bought so many.
This is unreal.
The invoice, when it got to 100, you had to monitor it till it got to 100. And if it went to 101, it just stopped.
I know, nobody could buy 101 cattle.
No, nobody could buy over 100. So Ian Armitage, he bought so many, along with Peter Winder.
Peter Winder, another man. The meat trade in those days were big men. Your Knights of Essex and people like that, Hackett's.
So Ian would have bought 200-300 cattle in 1 week.
A week?
No, in one day.
One day.
One day.
From us, he would buy,
Yes, yeah.
But some of them would stand. Some of them would stand for a week in our lairage.
Yeah, and kill them like the
And
week
kill
after.
the following week. You'd end up with, like, say, 3 men buying for one meat company,
Yeah.
Wow.
but in different rates. You'd have Peter
different
Winder
jobs.
buying for Macintosh Donald's, Ian Armitage buying for Macintosh Donald's, probably Charles Kilpatrick buying for Macintosh Donald's, and also their own man standing in the ring buying cattle as well. You know, your ring of buyers was but maybe 30 or 40 men buying fat cattle.
Because you see it around the sheep ring now, which people relate to various buyers buy on accounts 1 to 20.
Yeah.
That was exactly the same for Peter Winder at the time for cattle. That's how many cattle we had. He could operate on 20 different accounts himself.
Just phenomenal, eh?
But he had about 5 abattoirs, his own. No big abattoirs, but nice wee in Blackpool and Burnley and
they would have been.
Lancaster.
And really back then, there was no. The supermarkets didn't really have any trade for most of it. Everybody bought the meat through butchers.
Probably
really.
wouldn't have heard of a supermarket then, really.
So all of those small abattoirs were supplying small butchers in all those towns and cities. So it's a completely different scenario.
Yeah. And at the time, I think intervention purchasing as well for Europe as well. Surplus was bought and sold to Europe and resold at a later date.
Did you have a mentor or someone that you that showed you the ropes in your auctioneering?
You had men like, as I mentioned earlier, people like Raymond Clements. He always thought, that's what I wanted to be like, I want to be there. But there were every auctioneer's different, and every auctioneer has a different follower. And some people would like Raymond to sell their fat cattle. Some would rather have Jimmy Hislop to sell their fat cattle. But they're two completely different styles of selling. They'd end up doing it. You'd have Jimmy Hislop that would sell 280 cattle an hour. All day. Just sit at that. And then you'd have Raymond that would come into the box and he would sell 350 in 1 hour, and then he'd start messing about and sell 150 in the next hour.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to clerk to Raymond, but it was really fun as well.
That's what Mark
you didn't know which gear he was going to be in. It's like driving an electric car now. He put the foot down and you're off. And that's it. That's how fast he changed. In a way.
Yeah, he said that.
He would roll his trousers legs up and say, "Let's be going, lad."
Yeah.
And then he would go.
With his brandy? Was he the man that drank the
No,
brandy?
Jimmy was the brandy shop.
Oh,
it was Jimmy.
Raymond was mental tea.
He was into his herbal teas
Herbal
and things.
teas.
Herbal tea?
Yes.
So the
Red
other
tea
guy was
bags,
the other guy was the brandy drinker.
Brandy shandies, pints of brandy shandy.
So did you kind of just learn your trade of auctioneering, like you just as you went along? Kind of
As you
learn
went
your
along,
own
you
style?
learned at the coalface, really. You learned at the coalface. We did exams, which was day release up to Edinburgh.
Day release.
Through the institute, you would do the 8 different faculties of the industry. But it was completely different then to what the lads are doing at college now.
Yeah.
Probably the beauty of you with the auctioneers, we've always had the best auctioneers, haven't we, at H&H? And you've always had somebody to look up to and try to emulate, being Jimmy as David Tomlinson, Ray McClement, whoever.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are unfortunately no longer here, but we've had recent ones that's been really good. We've got current ones that are really good. You can't mention names because the heads are all big enough as it is.
Well, prima donnas, really.
Yeah, but you originally came here, Michael, with that sort of
well, that's right.
ambition.
But I'm pleased I didn't because it wouldn't have been my cup of tea. I don't think. No.
Yeah, you found your road though.
Yeah, but it's nice. I think when I look at the current, I haven't been here. Well, I've been here 20 years,
I was
but
gonna say.
not
Not that long.
time. But we've I think when we could be telling stories in another 20 years time.
Yeah.
We have a lot of characters in our, in the office, and there's stories being created all the time, So I hope that we can look back and reminisce about some of the things that are currently going on. I think we will, but you probably don't.
But there's difference. Things move on. It's like before mobile phones, you had to have your landline put in the sales list, and what would phone you up at your house? And they'd go. I always remember the story of one of my colleagues, because we sold the dairy on the Friday in those days, and the commercial dairy anyway. And this man phoned this auctioneer's.
Is this Edward?
Edward's wife, and Liz answered the phone, and this man goes, "Oh, I've got a cow with 3 tits. It's no bloody good to me. It'll have to be returned. It'll have to be returned. I don't want this bloody cow." And Liz just turned round and sharp as out and says, "Well, I've got 2 tits, and Edward's quite happy with mine." And that was the end of that.
And I think Edward, I think she hung up, and then she told Edward the story. Edward was like, "Who was that?"
Oh
but
my gosh.
we never ever heard who the farmer was. Was this the who it was? That's a classic story, yeah.
But there's hundreds of stories you forget about.
Oh, that's right.
I wouldn't like. Well, we don't even have a landline anymore in the house, but I wouldn't want people calling the house.
They just call your mobile constantly.
Well,
like,
yeah.
You can't turn off nowadays,
I
can
know
you?
Andrew mentioned mobiles. Yeah, they're the for the good and for the bad of auctioneers and the live ring situation. Because years ago I mentioned the telephonist Wendy.
Yeah.
A call would come in on through the sale. Attention please, call by Ian Armitage, and he'd have to run out the ring, round the corner into a little booth, pick up the call from wherever it comes from one of his buyers agents, etc. And the trade would either go up or down when he walks back into that ring. But nowadays it's a quick text or WhatsApp, and it can change just like that in the ring without anybody knowing. But
What's
at the time,
happened?
as soon as Ian Armitage went out the ring, or Peter Winder, the trade was going to go up or down.
Up or down, it's going to change.
And also, these men had that much financial backing. If cattle looked cheap, it didn't matter to them. They would buy extra and stack them as sheep. Where nowadays, there's no that the lads don't have the financial backing to buy 100 cattle at £2,000 a piece. It was 100 cattle at £700 a piece.
In those days, the sheets were all in sheets of 10 when we were clerking on them, and it was always a goal to try and get those 10 animals to get to £10,000 on those £6,000 an animal. But very rare that it ever got up there, because the animals weren't worth £1,000 a head.
Way back then.
No, that's great. I've really enjoyed hearing all those stories.
Yeah,
I think
so bad. It's been very
hope
insightful.
our listeners enjoy those old stories as well.
Have you enjoyed your 40 odd years?
Aye.
Yeah, it's never been really a chore. It's all,
It's going fast. You don't realise. You think it was just yesterday we did this, and it's you go shit. It's 10 years ago we did that.
No, it is.
But technology and everything's moving on at a pace now, so it's getting harder for the older person now, I think. Really. But we've got some good young staff coming through, and I think it's brilliant for the future for H&H.
Yeah, I think.
No, it's really. We have a great team. Yeah.
Another 50 years' time, we'll be doing the same. I don't know what you'll be doing in 50 years' time. Maybe not podcasts. God only knows what they'll be doing in 50 years' time.
I don't know.
It'll not be me or you.
It won't be.
Not at all. Maybe we'll be invited back.
I remember, Laura.
You'll be in your 90s. Maybe 98.
We used to do this podcast and speak into microphones. I don't know what it'll be.
I don't know either. Thank you very much, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
What a conversation. Conversations, may I say. Part 1 and part 2.
The thing that really stood out to me was all 4 have really enjoyed their working careers here.
Yeah.
I think that really came across.
Their stories were so emotive as well. Like there was laughs, there was deep thought about some of the milestones within the industry. It was just
and I think that reflects there's a lot of history there, like cultural history within the smoking, the drinking, a lot of that's cultural history there as well, which is really interesting. And the whole no computerization, no tech, and going from everything handwritten. But what was remarkable was how accurate all of their work was.
You had to be, didn't you?
They were, clerking now. I can actually clerk. I clerked yesterday a little bit, but I could never do their job. Do you know? Back in the day, I could not do that.
And
know,
Mark that clerked the wholesale at Dumfries, left-handed when he broke his
that's unbelievable. Eh?
arm.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But anyway, celebrating 50 years, this podcast is published the week of our 50th anniversary. So it's a fantastic milestone to have reached, and I'm sure, maybe not you and I, but I am sure Harrison and Hetherington will be here in 50 years' time.
Absolutely. Well, we're making plans that they will be.
It will be here in 50 years' time, absolutely. Once again, as always, thank you very much for listening to the one and only podcast. We will be back next month with another guest, another conversation. Please keep liking, keep sharing, keep listening. It really does mean the world to us. And massive thank you to our sponsors as well that are supporting the growing of this podcast.
Finance for Farms and Herds Media. And drop any suggestions for guests that you'd like to come on.
Absolutely. Please don't be scared. We love having a conversation with all types of people from all walks of life in this wonderful farming world that we work in. But for now, he's been Glyn Lucas.
And you've been Laura Miller.
Thank you very much for listening and watching, guys.
Bye.